Now, President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping hold high-stakes virtual meeting. In his opening remarks, President Biden called for candid discussions and said that the two countries need to establish some common sense in regards to order to prevent conflict. He also said that the United States and China should collaborate on vital global issues like climate change. On Biden's agenda for the meeting is human rights, economics, ensuring a free and fair Indo-Pacific. Let's just listen in.
As I've said before, it seems to me our responsibility as leaders of China and the United States to ensure that the competition between our countries does not veer into conflict, whether intended or unintended. Just simple, straightforward competition.
President Xi, meanwhile, said that humanity lives in a global village and that China and the United States needed to increase communication and cooperation.
I now look forward to a wide-ranging and comprehensive discussion with you, Mr. President, on overarching issues.
The issue that the United States is going to bring up in the meet are Chinese aggression towards Taiwan, setting terms of competition to avoid conflict, China's quote-unquote economic coercion, and China's alleged human rights abuses. Washington and Beijing have been sparring on several issues, but tensions over Taiwan have taken the center stage. United States is a close ally of Taiwan, while China claims sovereignty on the self-ruled island. In the face of Chinese aggression, Washington has repeatedly signaled its support for Taiwan and has not ruled out using force to bring it under control, and Beijing has been concerned by Washington's moves to deepen ties with Taiwan. She is expected to use this virtual meeting with Biden to warn America to step back on the Taiwan issue. Both sides have indicated that they will not give ground on the flashpoint issue.
A wide-ranging and comprehensive discussion with you, Mr. President, on overarching issues. Thank you.
And we are now being joined by Kate Fisher and also our correspondent Susan Tehrani. Thank you both for joining us. Kate, a first question to you. We've heard the opening statements. I'm sure you've heard them too. How do you assess these statements and how this sets the tone for talks between the two countries in the future as well?
Well, it was certainly a very respectful and almost friendly start to things. Xi Jinping referring to Joe Biden as saying he was very happy to see his old friend, and Joe Biden saying that he had spent many hours speaking to Xi Jinping in the past. But this is, of course, a very different meeting. Neither of them were leaders of their country at that time. Now they are both president and they have very much bigger issues to discuss. And the White House made it clear that this meeting is unparalleled in history. Never has there been a point in history where these two nations have had such an antagonistic and difficult relationship, and they are kind of charting new waters in trying to keep, as the White House keeps saying, keep this down to competition and not conflict.
Right. Let's just bring Susan into this discussion as well. Susan, thank you for staying with us. Now, Chinese President Xi Jinping has said that the two major economies of the world are at critical stages of development and that they needed to increase communication and cooperation. What steps can we see in that regard for that goal?
Yeah, I mean, commerce and trade are going to be one of the cornerstones of this meeting. And despite the fact that Xi Jinping was very happy in the beginning when Joe Biden became president 10-11 months ago, because he was expecting that Biden would sort of lift those tariffs that President Trump had put in place against Chinese goods. Well, President Biden didn't do that, and that was to a certain extent successful because he could use that as sort of a leverage point when it comes to the 7 deadly sins, if you may, of China, which is intellectual property theft, forced technology transfer, cyber hacking, dumping, predatory state-owned enterprise, currency manipulation, and then, we talked about earlier the distribution of medication containing fentanyl that's really coming from China into the United States. That's apart from human rights violations. What is of concern right now is whether or not Joe Biden might take a step back regarding these tariffs when it comes to the economic issue between the two sides because of the inflation problem that he's facing in the United States, something that Janet Yellen has alluded to, and something that a few companies have written letters to the Biden administration asking to maybe lift some of these tariffs. Republicans here in the United States say it's a bad idea. Inflation didn't go up when President Trump imposed those tariffs. So those discussions are going to come up definitely in the talks,
right.
But also I think again the issue of trade and this sort of supply chain that Biden is facing at home can't be escaped in the discussions for sure.
Right. Coming to you now, Kate. Now, we've spoken about the issues of contention between the two sides, but what are we expecting can be some places where the two countries can cooperate to go forward?
Yeah, and the White House was clear in its background call before this meeting to make that part of what they wanted to come out of this meeting. They say although there are a lot of differences between the countries, there are areas where they can work together, notably climate change, of course. Both countries taking a lead at the COP26 climate change conference in Glasgow, which has just wrapped up, showing there that they could agree on things and choose to work together on issues of transnational importance. But the White House making it clear that they don't believe that China is taking action on climate change alongside the US because it wants to work with the United States. They say they're doing it purely out of self-interest, and that anyone analysing the situation should realise that they're doing it because it serves China and not necessarily because it serves the relationship with the United States. The White House also saying that they hope they can find some level of collaboration over health security as well. But there's certainly a much longer list in the areas of contention than there are in those of
Absolutely.
the areas of agreement.
Right. Right, Kate, but also we have issues of human rights and also America's commitment to Taiwan. How do you assess the progress there?
Yeah, these are two very thorny issues, and Joe Biden has said that he will be direct and candid on them. He will not shy away from the accusations he's made in the past about China's treatment of the Uyghur Muslim population in Xinjiang, and that he will raise these as major issues that the US and most of the rest of the world have a big problem with. And when it comes to Taiwan, clearly that is probably the hottest issue at the moment, given the fact that China is responding to any kind of movement that the US makes towards relations with Taipei. It is making a military response to, for example, the US sending a delegation there recently. So I think that is a big issue that they need to discuss. And this is when Joe Biden is talking about putting in these guardrails. He wants to make sure that there is no misunderstanding or miscalculation when we're talking about two countries who have large militaries and a lot of weapons.
Right. Same question to you, Susan. Now, as Kate mentioned, rightly so, that Taiwan remains a dominant issue between the two countries. Now, we have the One China policy, not to be confused with the principle, One China principle, but how do we see talks progressing on that?
Yeah. You know, what's interesting is Joe Biden is expected to host the first of two summit for democracies, and it's bringing in December, and it's bringing together leaders of government, civil society, and private sectors of democracy. And one big question is whether or not he will invite the Taiwanese president to take part or not. And this is something that sources say is on Xi's mind, and which way Joe Biden will go. And President Biden, despite what's happening militarily, and is a great cause of concern in terms of national security and international security for the United States, China's hyper-aggressive policies towards Taiwan. But I think it's important to note that Joe Biden really went into this meeting prepared by forming alliances with democracies of the world. I mean, it does have NATO on the one hand, but it also was managed to form alliances like AUKUS, like the Quad. You know, he's fresh off a trip from Europe after his meetings in Rome and Glasgow. So he goes sort of with the backing of democracies of the world, meeting with Xi. And I think that having that sort of backing is very important when he wants to negotiate the terms and America's terms regarding Taiwan and other issues as well.
Right. All right, Susan and Kate, thank you so much for joining us with all the latest updates on that. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.